Today, I'm sharing a conversation that I had with the data scientist Kofi. Kofi created the ERC 437 data site Bundle Bear and some excellent Dune dashboards that I use myself to understand what is actually happening on chain. He's also just a really nice, smart guy who I always learn something from, and I hope you do too. Please enjoy this conversation with Kofi. Great, excellent. Thank you so much, Kofi, for joining. You have a very special relationship with StackUp. In fact, you even knew about StackUp before I did. We both learned about StackUp from a Reddit post. And you actually then reached out to my co-founder Hizim before I even reached out to talk with him about starting StackUp. Was that like a common thing that you did early on, is like, just like find things on Reddit and reach out to people? Or like, why did you decide to reach out to Hizim about it?
Yeah, so yeah, that was a fun one. I When I first started sharing like kind of crypto data stuff online, I didn't have Twitter initially. So Reddit was the first place that I went to when it came to like posting about crypto data and like just seeing community type stuff before, same as everybody else, I ended up graduating to crypto Twitter. And so I'd still occasionally like check, different like r/DeFi, r/Ethereum type forums. And at the time that I saw Zim's post, I was working at One Confirmation. This is this early stage crypto VC. So it was pretty much my job to just look around at things and try and find things that were interesting early. And I mean, I thought that the whole kind of space of you know, smart contract wallets had been interesting for a while. And Zim was, I think the first post that I saw from him had nothing to do with smart contract wallets yet. It was at that point, StackUp was it was like a Yearn type yield vault aggregator thing at the time. But I was just like, oh, the post was interesting. I was just like, it seemed like he was working on some interesting stuff. So I think I'd followed him on Reddit, and then he started posting about smart contract wallets, and I was just like, oh, I already had in my head, sort of some interest in that because I think that all wallets should be smart contracts. Being able to program them to do anything is pretty cool. So that's when I DM'd him because I just, yeah, I thought that he was cool and what he was writing about was cool. And whatever was going to happen out of it, I wanted to be involved somehow. And yeah, great guy, great guy. I think we like had a call after that, but it was a while ago. I was happy. I was one of the luckier finds.
The post that you're talking about, which was basically it was a proof of concept of a savings account, but that was like fully crypto on the back end. So under
Yes.
the hood, it was like it was a stable
Yeah.
coin like yield aggregator. But there was nothing about crypto in it, like in the description or the user experience. And that's why I personally reached out to his M. And in the comments of that post, he talked a lot about how like he envisioned the user experience for regular people, and he talked pretty passionately about how all of these crypto applications assume already a certain level of proficiency, and he wanted to strip all of that away, and that was something that
Yeah.
really resonated with me. How did you get into crypto in the first place?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a pretty roundabout way of doing it. It started off similar to a lot of people because, I mean, obviously in 2017, all the numbers were going up, so everybody was interested. And I was just lucky that I was living with some friends at the time who spent way too much money on graphics cards to start mining Ethereum out of the flat. And even at that time, I wasn't really convinced about the whole crypto thing. I was just like, I'm an international student in Scotland. I can't afford to be like, wasting money on computer parts. But they kind of introduced me to the idea. And near the end of 2017, that farm made some money. And then in 2018, price went down and all the money disappeared. And we were just like, oh, I guess we weren't geniuses. We moved on with our lives. We were finishing our degrees, getting real jobs and stuff. But that was my first introduction to crypto as a thing. And hey, it's kind of interesting. It's like a shiny toy. I like shiny toys. And it was in 2020. that I got kind of involved again. I was doing, like I said, like a normal real job. I was working as a transport planner. So I don't know, railway timetables, like design a roundabout, that sort of thing. But in 2020, like news stories started to kind of pop up of like, oh, this person spent $100,000 on an NFT. And I was like, that's really interesting to me because it was kind of, I think it made sense putting together the jigsaw puzzle of, oh, DeFi is, people doing financial stuff on chain. Like there's all of this money stuff that's on chain. But, this NFT stuff is, bringing all of these other aspects of life, like kind of cultural, entertainment, fun stuff on chain. I was like, that's cool because most people are not interested in complex financial derivatives. Most people care about like art and stuff more. So yeah, I just found it interesting and I wanted to figure out what was going on there. Also had like a little bit of FOMO because everybody has that experience from their first cycle of, oh, I wish I'd done more in 2017. That would have been pretty good if I'd actually done more. So it's kind of FOMO of like this time, if I find something interesting, I should actually try. But I didn't have any money because, as you can imagine, graduate transport planners are not exactly rolling in cash. It's not the most profitable, like, profession out there. But I was doing a lot of data science stuff in that day job. Um, so I was like, how can I just apply some of the data science stuff to crypto? Like, where's the place where I can go and write Python or whatever to analyze crypto data? Um, and I mean, you were right earlier, kind of on the self-taught side of things, because I mean, I studied civil engineering and I was working at a civil engineering consultancy. I didn't have any like formal data science education, but when I was doing my degree, I'd like done online courses to teach myself stuff because I was like knowing how to code is cool, and I was doing it a lot in that day job. So yeah, I was figuring it out. I like was trying to scrape people's websites to get numbers, and then I learned that Dune was a thing, that a popular tool that people were using to analyze blockchain data. So yeah, I was just teaching myself about different tools and first posting about stuff on Reddit and then posting about stuff on Twitter and getting to know people that way. Because I mean, at the time, there was a lot of hype around NFTs, but there weren't a lot of people who knew anything about NFTs. So just by virtue of being like somebody with a chart, people thought that I knew what I was doing and like wanted my opinion on things and wanted my help with things and stuff. Which is ultimately what led to me quitting that normal job to go and work in crypto full time at One Confirmation, because um, my old boss at One Confirmation, Richard Chen, is one of the, I'll call him one of the crypto data science OGs. And so, like, I was messaging him, asking him questions, and he was seeing what I was doing, and we were chatting about stuff. And at some point, he was just like, "Oh, it seems like you're more interested in this. Why don't you just quit your job to come and work here instead?" So I did that in maybe somewhere near the start of 2021, and I was with them until the end of 2022. Yeah.
It's funny to hear. I did not know that you had a degree in civil engineering.
Master's degree went all the way.
Oh,
5 years
master's
of my
degree.
life. I'm supposedly a master at
Yeah.
structural and ground engineering and all of this stuff that all of this knowledge that I'm never going to use again for the rest of my life. Not that it was a waste of time. I mean, I got to learn other things, meet nice people, but like, yeah, it's a long time
Yeah,
to not then use it.
yeah, I understand that. I mean, I went into college, so I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, and then my master's degree is in both engineering and business. But I went from using it like like every day of like my working life to when I decided to go into
Yeah,
crypto, like none of it, absolutely none of it is relevant anymore,
yeah,
except like that analytical thinking mindset. I think is still absolutely core, as well as thinking about things really from like first principles. I think is one thing that engineering teaches really well, that is I think kind of lost sometimes on some of the other disciplines. But You mentioned that you left one confirmation at the end of 2022. And I remembered in 2022, in December of 2022, you wrote a great Twitter thread on how to build the next crypto data unicorn. Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're spending your time on? Are you building the next, crypto data unicorn?
No, definitely not. I mean, it was interesting to write the thread because it was one of those, where that thread came from. There's a very like small community of crypto data nerds who have been doing crypto data nerd stuff for a few years. It's one of those things where there aren't a lot of people who do it, and so like you get a lot of demands on your attention. And I would keep getting DMs, and I still get DMs today from like people who are starting new crypto data startups asking like, "Hey, can I get your opinion on this?" Or like, "What do you think about that?" Or "Am I doing the right thing?" And I thought that that thread was kind of a good way of trying to summarize the thing that I was telling 15 different people 15 different times. Um, which basically, like in summary, was just that we've very much reached a point where raw blockchain data is very commoditized as like a product. I mean, if you want to get like raw transactions, traces, logs, there are 2 dozen different places you can do it. A lot of those places will give it to you for free. They'll even give you compute for free. You don't even need to like, the free plans. You can do a lot of stuff with the raw data. And so it's hard to kind of claim that you're going to build an amazing business just like selling free raw blockchain data. But what's a lot more interesting is like the interpretation level of things where people don't really want raw blockchain data. People just want to know, why is this token going up? And people are using this project, but what are they using it for? And what's the most popular, I don't know, what's the most popular user on this crypto social network? Like people want answers to their questions. And cleaning and sorting raw blockchain data to put it into a format that can actually answer questions is something that takes a ton of effort and a ton of time and specific knowledge. And so that actually is valuable because if you have a specific data set, you might be the only person who has that data set. And depending on who needs it, then maybe there's a business opportunity that comes out of that. So, yeah, the interpretation side of things is more interesting. But I personally would not try and build a unicorn because I know a few people who I think are qualified for that or who have done that, regardless. And there's a certain personality type that I don't have in terms of one, just the desire, just like wanting to actually do that really, really badly and being willing to sacrifice a lot of things for that to be the case. And two, also just sort of uh, a level of intensity that I'm comfortable not seeing in myself. I would say that in general, like I'm a pretty relaxed guy. I just kind of want to do the things that I want to do, make cool stuff with like nice people, and then I don't know, hang out with my friends on the weekends. Like I'm not really trying to like make a dent in the world or anything. So I'm not trying to build a unicorn, but what I am doing is just, like I said, just trying out a bunch of different stuff that I find interesting, making little tools here and there for like different um, areas of crypto that I think are cool, and doing some contracting work because contracting work pays like my rent, and you know I was writing a newsletter. I am on hiatus with the newsletter because I want to like reformat that a little bit, but just random stuff along those lines.
Gotcha. You mentioned that the crux of building valuable crypto data is in the interpretation of that data, and that includes things like who are the users on this platform, or uh, uh, what are people really spending money on? Why did this token go up? How do you take this giant public ledger, which even though it's public is pretty unintelligible, and convert it into those insights?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few steps to it, uh, and most of the work is pretty like just grindy on a case by case basis. Because I mean, you have a question like somebody might say, um, there's some new L2 and people are doing a lot of DEX trades on the L2. Like, can you tell me what are these people trading or whatever? And I mean, there's the first stage of the data collection of kind of figuring out, okay, I want to answer something about what's happening with DEX trading on this L2. So what data source am I going to use? Like, where can I go to get the raw transaction data for a list of contracts that are DEX contracts? And you have to manually go and read people's docs and be like, oh, these are the five most popular DEXs on this L2. And the docs say that these are their contracts. And I'm going to get the transactions for those contracts from some raw data provider. And so now I've got like the raw material. And then you do the kind of the interpretation processing stuff of first figuring out how do I get the information that the specific information that I want out of this raw data. So maybe I want to know how big was the trade, who made the trade. And you might say, based on either what the docs say, but usually people write terrible docs, so those aren't very helpful. Or maybe I'll make a trade myself on that platform and then observe the transaction and now see that, oh, in the logs, very thankfully, this DEX contract has a log that tells you specifically who made the trade and how big is the trade for every trade. And so I understand how to interpret it, and you then need to just write like some SQL, DBT, Python, whatever you're doing to transform the raw data into a nicer table of, instead of all this raw hex code stuff, this is specifically all the trades, who made the trades, how much each trade was. And then finally you have the sort of the communication part of it where like you've got a nice table, write some more code to then like that and solves or answers the final question of like how much trading volume happened every day for which token. Maybe you make a dashboard that shows it visually. Maybe you write a report. Maybe you, whatever it is, the final like last leg communication part of it is there. So there's getting the raw data, and then there's figuring out like how do I get what I want out of the raw data, and how, writing code to like transform that into legible format. And then there's communicating it of like the last mile stuff of how are you going to present this to like a non-technical person. um, and yeah, you just do that again and again for like every random thing that people want to know about. And I wish there was some more automated way to do it, but there isn't, because every new problem you face, like most people don't follow standards necessarily. So every case is different and like just requires like starting from scratch, sort of.
You have a really interesting perspective because you have really been like nitty gritty with blockchain data, trying to make, figure out what the story is and how to communicate that story for many, both like kind of broad ecosystem trends as well as, like individual projects or things that are going on.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There are so many ways to answer it, because on the one hand you you could start the story by looking at the incentives. I don't know who, there's some quote about like show me the incentives, I'll show you the result. Maybe it's Charlie Munger or something, or maybe somebody just wrongly attributed it to Charlie Munger, I don't know. And so you could look at it from an incentives standpoint and say, hey, what's happening on chain is that we had a period, sort of whatever you want to say, 2020, early 2021, we call it DeFi summer or whatever, of like people used to not do so much stuff on chain. And then there's a massive explosion of people doing stuff on chain because DeFi protocols start giving people tokens to use them, starting with Compound, and then, Uniswap, Airdrop, and Aave, and all of these sorts of airdrops and liquidity mining programs to incentivize people to like, hey, use our product as opposed to using a TradFi thing, because you're gonna also get some ownership in the product that you're using, and that's like a massive spike in usage. And then sort of 2021, 2022, the kind of the story changes because we start to see like, I mean, at the time it was kind of people might call it the alter one rotation, right? Of like you see chains and rollups in the similar way to how DeFi protocols did, like running their own incentives game that like also spiked their activity. So you've got who was first? I can't remember who was first. I feel like Polygon was first in terms of like cementing the joint liquidity mining playbook because they had joint liquidity mining with Aave first, I think, basically kind of being like, hey, don't just do stuff on Ethereum mainnet or whatever. Come and do stuff on our sidechain or our rollup. We're going to do like a joint incentive program with protocols so that like you are going to get ownership of our, rollup or our network by coming to come and use us instead. So join liquidity mining with, do it with Aave, do it with Curve, do it with whatever DeFi protocol it is, so that people come and use those same products, but on your chain. And Polygon do that, Avalanche do joint liquidity mining stuff. Everybody has like some version of joint liquidity mining or incentives, and you have folk on like chains like Solana having their own incentive programs, maybe not necessarily joint liquidity mining like with Solana Foundation and with protocols, but protocols themselves doing their own incentives thing. And so, yeah, there's app incentives and then there's chain incentives that become a huge thing. And right now, we're like in a weird bit, right? Because like the market is not as crazy as it was in 2021, but it's not dead anymore. Like money is flowing in because of like, I don't know, Bitcoin ETF and resparking speculation and all of that. And when you think about where the incentives are coming from, it's not immediately obvious because like there aren't there are still like big airdrops going on and lots of airdrop farmers and maybe less liquidity mining, more airdrop farming on the side of things, but there's not as clear a picture as there was maybe 2020 or 2021 or 2022. But if you look at the on-chain data, in a lot of cases, you'll find that like, this thing is popping off. Why is it popping off? Is there some new user behavior that people are really interested in? And the answer is usually not. Usually what's happening is that the protocol has done like a Galaxy quest or something like that. So Galaxy is this platform that helps protocols run, a new but similar type of incentive program where it's just like, we're going to measure whether or not did you follow this protocol's Twitter account and then do this activity on chain and then do like a whole set of activities very transparently. And in exchange, you'll get a badge or you'll get an NFT or you'll get some tokens maybe. And there's some sort of, even if you're not getting tokens directly, there's some sort of, what's the word? Expectation that the quest is associated with expectation of future tokens or whatever. And quests are less sort of flashy, like Galaxy and kind of protocols like it aren't really big on sort of promoting. Well, they do promote themselves, but they don't capture the attention of crypto Twitter, and they're not trying to because their job is more to direct attention to their partners who they work with, as opposed to direct attention to themselves. The same way that a liquidity mining program or a joint liquidity mining program was supposed to draw attention to yourself. They're more like a service provider of incentives. And so that's kind of, I think, the story at the moment. And that will also change. I mean, because right now people are tired of Galaxy quests and other form of quests. Like there's, this roll-up scroll was going to do a Galaxy quest thing. And they announced it maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that. And their comments were just filled with like people being angry, like, no, Galaxy is just chains and roll-ups farming us instead of us farming them. And, we're tired of that. We just want to go back to like less transparent, like airdrop farming ways, because it kind of felt that we just got tokens instead of being farmed, whatever it is. And so Scroll decided to not do the Galaxy quest that they were going to do. So the incentive meta game even now is like probably changing to something different. And it's instead of quests, who knows what it will be next? I don't really know because I just like watch stuff and I see what happens. Uh, and I don't really have so much of a clairvoyant type talent myself. But yeah, that's what I see going on. That's kind of what I think is happening.
Gotcha. So in the account abstraction community, you are very well known because you are uh, the creator of Bundle Bear, as well as a bunch of like very helpful Dune dashboards relating to account abstraction. Uh, when did your like interest in account abstraction start, and how has it evolved?
Yeah. So my interest in account abstraction and kind of smart contract wallets kind of started around 2021 time. So, like I said, even before I saw like Hazim starting to post on Reddit about smart contract wallets, I'd been thinking about them, and I mean, we've even kind of talked about this quite a few times internally when I was at One Confirmation about just how it really made sense from a user experience perspective for smart contract wallets to eventually be the standard. Just because you know the current way of doing things, having a EOA wallet, most people are not equipped to deal with the consequences of using an EOA wallet. Like I would never set up one for my mom because if she lost her seed phrase, she would lose all her money and I couldn't help her. Something as simple as just being able to recover an account, being able to change the keys, being able to have multiple people on the keys. Again, we list up we actually, I think this is a bad habit of people in the account abstraction space of whenever this topic comes up, we just list off a list of features. But it's hard to find another way to like convey the excitement because it really is just these are things that every other service on the internet has by default, the ability to recover stuff and to share security and to automate things and have automated actions, all of this stuff. This is just like default standards on the internet that people expect to find, and you can't do that with the wallets that we have, but you can do that with smart contract wallets. But in the past, a lot of smart contract wallet attempts didn't work out for varying reasons. One of them just being Ethereum L1 is a really expensive chain to use, and it costs money to deploy every single one of those wallets. And so, for in a lot of ways, it just didn't make that good economic sense for people until we reached the stage we're at now, where there are all of these roll ups and all of these side chains and all of these solutions that will let you do stuff much, much cheaper and much, much faster. So now the kind of the economics of choosing a smart contract wallet make more sense. And what's left is to kind of deliver on some of those value props that we love to list out, even though we shouldn't, of just like, you can have this feature and that feature and other feature of all of these features that you would want a wallet to have that you couldn't have before and that you can have now, and it will be so much better. It's just like, yeah, the money stuff has sort of been sorted out. And so now it's more on the delivering the value side, the potential value side that like is left to do. And yeah, I mean, I for the past year now have been doing a lot of smart contract wallet data stuff because, like I said, I found it interesting for a while. But when specifically like the 4337 standard launched, it was a good kind of turning point of directing people's attention, basically. On the one hand, you've got all of these big industry incumbents thinking, hey, maybe this new standard thing, we should do something around that, whether it's the MetaMask team or the Safe team or whatever, figuring out their 4337 plan. And then you've got like a new crop of dozens and dozens and dozens of startups thinking about like, hey, this is the roll call or the sounding the horns or whatever. It's time to like go and do smart account stuff and working all together in this on this similar standard. Data scientists love standards because it just makes it easier to watch an entire category and an entire host of people as opposed to having to individually one by one do like custom analysis for every single solution. So yeah, it's been something I've spent a lot of time on over the past year.
Today is February 26th of 2024. So it's been almost exactly a year since the like public announcement that ERC 4337 had been audited and was ready to use. How would you describe the progress of ERC 4337 and smart accounts so far, and where do you think it's going?
The progress of the sort of ERC 4337 space is still relatively early. I mean, there are bigger numbers now than there were before, right? Because across at least the chains that I'm tracking, there are maybe 3 million of these accounts that have been created on all sorts of chains doing all sorts of stuff. Um, but the reason why I say it's still early is because if you look at the data, we're still at a point where one app can dominate the vast majority of ERC4 through 7 activity. So maybe when the standard first launched, kind of beginning of last year, the biggest things were I don't know, people didn't really know what to do with it. We're just kind of like, oh, we're building wallets with this new standard, but what should we use them for? And there were a few things like maybe people doing quests, also talking about quests again on CapEx or whatever to like earn promise of some protocols tokens, or maybe using like some random betting app on Polygon, but just not really so much interesting stuff. And then, we got the first big spike in 437 usage because CyberConnect started attracting a lot of usage. So CyberConnect, for people listening who might not know, it's this kind of on-chain social product, and they made it so that every one of their users got a smart account. Um, in order to interact with the protocol. And it was basically like a big airdrop farming thing. So they single-handedly drove like the vast majority of the usage that is kind of in the 437 space. And then CyberConnect did their airdrop, and all their airdrop farmers left, and so the attention went elsewhere. I think near sort of maybe August or something time last year, it the folk who climb to the top of the leaderboard are Grindery. Grindery have this Telegram bot for crypto trading, and every person who uses the bot gets a smart account made for them. And there's Fan TV, which is this Indian streaming platform that gives people tokens for watching videos. So those two products, for the next few months, drove the vast majority of the usage. And right now, for the past month or so, the folk responsible for the vast majority of the usage have been like AnyChess. So AnyChess is this joint project between chess.com, which is like the biggest chess playing website in the world, and Animoca Games, which is some like crypto gaming, who knows what it is, fund incubator joint. Nobody, they do too much stuff, but they've got this website called AnyChess where I guess people play chess and they get NFTs for playing the chess, and that's been driving the vast majority of the usage. And so you see these waves, and they're very easy to pick out where they start and where they end, and it's usually one or two products driving them. And I would stop saying that 437 is early when we reach a point where the vast majority of the usage isn't controlled by just one product, where there's like many, many, many products that have a lot of usage. And if I see a spike or a dip in the charts, it's not just like John's responsibility or like Jacob's responsibility or whatever. It's maybe because of a wider industry trend and not because only one app or only two apps made a decision. Because right now the usage is more fragile because there aren't so many killer products that like are all using the standard. But I'm kind of optimistic that we'll get there because folk like you guys are working on great tooling to make it easier for builders to make cool stuff with smart contract wallets instead of just resorting to using EOAs. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, in the wider smart contract wallet space, you've got other things going on. I mean, Safe has been around since the beginning of time, basically, and they've got their very specific niche of like, if somebody is a high net worth individual or working in a fund or basically needs to secure like a large amount of money, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, a safe multi-sig has always kind of been the gold standard for that. There's a lindiness of like they haven't been compromised from a security perspective before, and so people looking to secure a large amount of money feel safe using Safe. And it's just a good idea to like have a bunch of signers on a multi-sig instead of having one person hold the keys for a wallet with a bunch of money in it. I mean, if you look at the history of uh, big hacks in crypto, it's rarely the case that you get a big hack where there are more than, I don't know, six signers on a multi-sig who are genuinely separate signers in separate places who aren't connected. Um, like good multi-sig practices genuinely are genuinely good at protecting people's money. It's when you have bad multi-sig practices, like, oh, we have three or four multi-sig, but three of the keys are controlled by Sam. That's when things go badly. They're just stored in plain text on the company servers or whatever it is. So, Safe are doing their thing and Safe are going to be fine. We've got some roll-ups like Starknet and ZK Sync making smart contract wallets the default. And so like every single wallet on that chain is a smart contract wallet and has the advantages of things like, Starknet is working on their paymaster functionality or whatever. So people will be able to pay gas with any token, and, the wallets there have the social recovery and all of that stuff sorted out. So they're like, oh, going from the perspective of this is just something that's going to be built into the base layer. Maybe that will happen in the Ethereum ecosystem eventually, but right now, 437 and other implementations are kind of the way Ethereum ecosystem is generally doing it. And yeah, again, I'm just like watching all of this stuff. I don't really have a strong opinion on like what happens after that. That's kind of more a thing for you guys who actually do stuff and have real jobs.
Hey man, you definitely have a real job in the sense of like the value that you provide the community at large. Uh,
Thanks, man.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
um, Bundle Bear has like very frequently been my source of like okay macro level what's going on. Uh, and tying that together with our internal data on like hey what are our customers doing has really been interesting because you of course can only look at what's actually like happening on chain and often just a handful of the most popular chains when there's also a lot of activity like in development as well as on app specific chains that I think is really interesting but provides like a big challenge to uh, data researchers because a lot of those chains are permissioned or uh, otherwise just too difficult to or too burdensome to look at all the time in case something happens.
Yeah, and there's also just a practical aspect of like, if you are a data analyst rather than necessarily a data engineer like me, you are somewhat at the whim of raw data providers in the sense of like, if an app chain, like you were saying, maybe is new, is doing something, if they're not so popular yet, then it's possible that you might just not have a raw data provider who has indexed them, and can provide you with raw data to then go and do analysis on. And so you'd have to get the raw data yourself. And I have no interest in that. I don't want to start running nodes for a bunch of like really tiny chains just in case something might happen. I would rather wait for like a larger provider like Alium. Shout out to Alium, great guys, or like the Dune team to index a chain so that I can then just work on top of what they've got.
At the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that like you're a pretty like chill guy, dude. You're super chill. I remember like when we met in person for the first time at in Paris, I think, at
Yeah.
ETHCC. I remember we went to a bar and got a drink, and I was like, oh sweet, he is actually just as chill as like his online persona is. It's always an absolute joy to talk to you.